Hello, hello, hello. I'm not even ever sure how this thing works anymore because this is a totally different setup than I've been used to in the past. But anyway, I want to welcome you all who come here. I promised that I would come on here today to do a Facebook Live. And this is all about authentic vibrations versus spiritual bypassing. I feel like it's a very important subject for us all, especially us conscious people, to take a look at. And I bring this up because I had a conversation with someone on earlier this week. I think it was Monday. And the person was telling me, about a situation in their life where they've always take the high road. They have a son with someone and with their ex-husband. And apparently, when I'm not really sure if it was when the child was born, right after the child was born, when she was pregnant with the child, um, they ended up splitting up. So the child has never known their parents to be together, really. And so, what brings this up is because she was saying, "Oh, I always try to take the high road with my ex and his girlfriend." And so I was like, "Oh, well, let me ask you a question. Does that feel authentic to you? Or are you just doing this because you think that's the best way to handle something? Or are you doing it because you authentically feel that way?" And it was just like, that's a good question, Tomasa. And so the thing about it is, I think a lot of us do this. We want to take the high road, and so we end up taking the high road, and that's called spiritual bypassing. Can be spiritual bypassing if it doesn't feel authentic. And so before I get started telling you more about this and give you an example, is I want to talk about why this is spiritual bypassing. I'm going to explain it from a science point of view because I have an electrical engineering background. And so that is the best way I can explain it. Okay. And so what I want to share, hi, Herschel, is that what happens is, something triggers us. Like maybe somebody upsets us, we get sad. I'm going to ignore that phone. That's my sister's landline. Um, we get upset. We might get sad. We might get triggered, angered, or whatever. I noticed last week I was in a situation where I got angry, and it's a very similar situation that I've been in before. And so instead, I said, "Okay, Tomasa, I got to go have a talk. I got to let some steam out. I got to go deal with this, right?" So if I didn't deal with it, I would have had the same outcome that I always have. Um, and I knew that was the message I got. And so this is very prevalent among all of us. We might say, "Oh, we have to change our thoughts. We can't do that to that person." It's easy to just dismiss it. But the issue is still there at hand, and we didn't handle it because there's something deeper that triggered it inside of us. Something that happened much earlier in our life than in that moment. Because that moment, what happened is somebody did something that reminded us something of our past. And we're not even real clear with that and know that because we're on autopilot, which I call the subconscious mind just kicked in. So what tends to happen is we do a bypass. And the bypass is like, "Okay, I'm just going to give it up to the divine," or you're going to say an affirmation or dismiss it, right? And then nothing gets handled, and then it comes back in your life again. And these are what we call blocks. So, the key is to handle it right away. So what I'm going to say is that, many of us, I'm guilty of it. I grew up, or I shouldn't say I grew up. When I got out of college, I studied a lot of metaphysics, and a lot of metaphysics includes affirmations. And for me, because I come from the Center of Spiritual Mind Treatments, or Spiritual Mind Treatment Center for Spiritual Living kind of work, saying spiritual mind treatments, and they have their place. Don't get me wrong, they do have their place. But if you ever done affirmations and they don't work, the problem is because you're doing a spiritual bypass. And so there's still this little noise there that's in the background. I call it a latent noise. A latent noise that shows up because you are triggered by something or some situation. And it's so deeply buried because it comes from earlier in your life. And it's not always just this life. If you're a person like I am, who believes in that we live many lives or have had many lifetimes, and we might even be living many lifetimes as we speak right here, right now. So, this is what multidimensional living is all about, right? And so, what happens is you're triggered by something that has happened. The soul remembers everything, by the way. And so that latent noise sticks with it. And so these affirmations that you want to say and what you want to create in your life, well, it can't happen. And it can't happen because you got this latent noise in the background that hasn't been dealt with. And so, if I were to measure all this on an oscilloscope, I think that's what we call them, if I recall my engineering days, there's a frequency, a current that goes through something. And then underneath there is some noise, and the noise can distort the frequency. And so there you have a distortion of frequency. And so guess what? That's the block that's getting in the way of you creating what you want in your life. And so what happens is you go through life with that and you don't even know, why can't I create this in my life? Why can't I have this in my life? Because there is a block, and it's this latent noise of some emotion, some situation that hasn't been handled. And so it stays there until you get to the root of it. So I'm going to give you an example now that I just talked about that. So I started out with a conversation I had earlier this week with someone who was talking about, how, she feels like her ex manifests everything that she wants in her life. Like they manifested first, her ex and his girlfriend, and she doesn't. And so when she immediately said that to me, I could feel the enviness in that, her saying that. Is it true that they do that? I don't know. But all I know is that you have to come to a place of not worrying about what the ex feels or what is the ex about. And you can't badmouth them. And it can't be about I'm bypassing it. But it's like if you have some feelings about it, then it's time that you go look at the root of why you have these feelings about it. And that's what I said to her. And she's like, thank you, Tomasa. That's deep. And it's sort of like you got to get to the root. And I said, you got to go do your inner work. So a lot of people don't understand what I mean when I say inner work. So let's talk about what is inner work. So a lot of people think that you need to go meditate and all this. To me, meditation is a maintenance of the inner work that you've done. So inner work means I got to go journey back and find out why I'm feeling this way. So I did a session on someone recently, and it was interesting because, it's been the holidays, and this person doesn't really like their job. So I'm sure many of you who are in corporate America might be able to relate. Or if you've been in corporate America, you can relate to it, right? There's a lot of people in corporate America who don't like their jobs. And it's not necessarily that they don't like their jobs. It's like they don't like the politics in corporate America. And I think it's a very funny time to bring this up as we deal with the politics here in the United States. A lot of stuff going on. I mean, I could tell you what I'm feeling and all that, but I'm not going to go there. So here's the deal is, I said to her, so tell me about, what it feels like that you're about to go back to work. And she said, I don't feel free there. I can't be free. And I heard it. I heard it right off the bat from her. And I said, oh. And I began to ask her questions, and I began to take her down a journey. And this is what I do with most of my clients. And by the way, I got clearance to talk about it because you guys don't know who it is anyway. So I remember just taking her down the journey of not feeling like she could be free to express herself. And she doesn't feel that way at work. She feels like she's walking on eggshells, and she could say the wrong thing at any moment. And oh my God, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to lose my job. How many people have been there before? I certainly can relate. That's why I'm not in corporate America anymore, because I needed to be my authentic self. And when I learned how to play the politics, I go, I gotta go. I'm not liking who I am here. So, anyway, she began to go down the journey. And when we went back to look at why she felt like she wasn't free to be who she was, to express who she was, we went back to a time when she was 3 years old. Do you hear me? 3 years old. And down the journey, it was something as simple as I'm about to take a picture with my siblings' partner, or boyfriend, girlfriend. I'm not going to tell you who it is because you might know who it is. Some of you might be watching. And she says, my mom is telling me to act a certain way, and I don't like it because I have to act and be this way. And I mean, this is just as simple as that. It was like, wow, can you see the 3 year old who feels like they cannot be their authentic self? And so, I mean, it can start as early as 3. It can start as early as when you're in the womb. A lot of things go back to the womb, and it can be even before this lifetime. And so we began to look at how she was feeling and what she needed. So this is what inner work. So pay attention. What is inner work? Okay? Because a lot of people think, I'm just going to go meditate and do all this other stuff. And I'm tell you, meditation is just a maintenance to help you on your journey after you've done the inner work. Okay? And so the inner work is, I need to go find out what that 3 year old needed in that moment. She needed someone to let her know that it was okay for her not to be an actress, not to act a certain way to take a picture, not to look a certain way in the picture, but to just totally be free and be herself. How many of us have felt that way? I know that, I was around someone recently and they didn't like who I was, and that was okay. What I find is people from the East Coast, they feel like I'm sorry, East Coast people, I love you all dearly, but, and I'm just saying men from the East Coast, they want you to be a certain way. And if you're not like that, and so I'm a California girl, I'm free spirit. So it was like, whoa, all right, see ya. I'm going to be free to be who I am. There's a lot of places in our lives where we can see where this is. We're supposed to act a certain way. And if we don't act this way, then we're not good. We're not valued. We're not, we're just not acceptable. And so, and that this can happen as a child. If children are to be seen and not heard, I can't tell you how many times I heard that growing up. I love my parents, by the way. Anyway, so, so we had to go back and parent this child within her. And it's not about we just parent it. What I see a lot of people do is like, oh, we're just going to go talk to the inner child or whatever. We understand it. But no, it's another step here. And the step is, what did that child need in that moment? And you give that child what she needed in that moment. And you can create that in your mind's eye. And this is when you bring in visualization and you bring in the third eye and you do all this stuff. It's like, oh, because this is where the programming happens with the neural pathways. And so then we recreate the situation. But we recreate the situation given that child what they needed in that moment when they felt like they were not free to be themselves. So that's an example. And we went ahead and we did that. It's so funny because I got off the phone with this person earlier today and I've been kind of in touch with them. And they said to me, wow, I'm not even worried about what people think of me at work anymore. And see, that's the beauty behind this work. When you go to the place of you don't care what anybody thinks. And people's like, but shouldn't you? Because it's your job and you might lose your job. And actually, all that stuff of worrying about if people are going to accept you or not, A lot of times people want you to be free and want you to express, and you don't know that because you're around walking on eggshells and being politically correct or whatever. But maybe in these times, what people want is you to be authentic. So let's get back to the spiritual bypassing. So she didn't spiritual bypass it. Instead, and I'm talking about the client I'm talking about that I worked with recently, who went back to corporate America dealing with their job. She authentically felt like the vibrations were there where she could go to work and not worry about what anybody thinks about her. Rather than saying, I'm going to work and I'm going to say these affirmations to get me through this. And the affirmations can work temporarily, but they won't hold it. Because at some point in time, things are going to break loose and she's going to react to someone. Instead, she got to the root of why she was feeling that she couldn't be herself at work. Instead, she went to the place where she was 3 years old, where she was taught not to be herself. And she had a reaction right then and there that didn't get handled. So we handled it, we reprogrammed it in her session. And so this is the reason why you want to go do your inner work, because you will authentically settle in the vibrations needed for you to create your life, to co-create your life, rather than going, okay, I'm just going to say an affirmation that my boss does this and that. So when you do your inner work, you take responsibility for your life. You don't give your power away to someone else. You don't hand it off to, you know, somebody else, because then that can put you vulnerable to be a victim of whatever they say or do. So you take the bull by the horns, and then you're able to stand in authentic vibrations. So I thank you all for who have come on here to join me. I see people popping in and off. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comments section, and I'm happy to answer them. And if you would like to learn more about how you can step into your authentic self and have these vibrations organically happen for you so you don't have to fake it till you make it. Because this is true when we're trying to create money in our lives or create work in our lives or create anything in our lives, relationships. So we have to really sit in the space of really doing our inner work. And that's so much deeper than meditation. This is like what I call Scorpio energy. So this is like taking the darkness and transforming it to what we want it to be. Instead of going, bury that, and we're just going to go and say some affirmations. And then watch yourself like really cringe at the affirmations because they're not really working. All right, loves. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And those of you who listen later, please feel free to comment. Namaste. Have a beautiful, beautiful afternoon, and Happy New Year. Bye-bye.